Scott here with the Carrera Cafe. Today we're going to be going over the FabSpeed Muffler bypass for my 911 3.2 Carrera. For those of you that don't know what the FabSpeed bypass is, it's probably the lowest cost exhaust upgrade that you could do for your air-cooled 911. And this is applicable to 911 SCs and 3.2 Carreras. Essentially, it's a prefabricated pipe that you can bolt onto your 911 in replace of the muffler. There's no welding needed. It's pretty much something you can do by yourself in your garage. You'll shave about 20 pounds, and it's estimated that you might pick up, 8 or 10 horsepower. The car might feel a little bit more peppy. The big drivers are obviously for the sound improvement and kind of opening it up. I've been looking at different exhaust options, and I figured before I spend $1,000, $2,000 on a new muffler and heat exchangers, since this FabSpeed bypass is only about $300, I figured, you know what, I should give it a shot. So today, we're gonna go over installing this FabSpeed bypass on your 911. We'll get it installed, take some drive-by videos, do some videos inside the car, and then kind of give you guys our final thoughts. So with that, let's go out in the garage and get into it. Before we get into removing the muffler and installing the FabSpeed bypass, I just want to go over a couple tips to make it a bit easier on you. The first might seem obvious, but make sure the car's cooled off. If you just finished driving it, everything underneath there is going to be hot. So just let it cool off before you start this project, or do it first thing in the morning before you've driven the vehicle. The second tip is you're either going to want a second set of hands or have a floor jack nearby. And the reason I say that is once you get under the car and start loosening a couple of the bolts that hold the current muffler in, it's going to start to want to fall down and really put unnecessary strain on other aspects of the car. So you can either have an extra set of hands kind of hold the muffler as you loosen things, or in my case, I'm going to use a floor jack to kind of hold some of the weight of that muffler as I loosen things up. That way I'm not putting any unnecessary strain on it. Other than that, tools required, it's pretty straightforward. You're going to want an adjustable crescent wrench. You're going to want either a 1/2 inch or 13 millimeter set of sockets or open-ended wrench just to be able to loosen both sides. I'm actually going to use an impact to get mine off, just because they could have been on there for a while. Depending on how rusted your bolts look, you might want to hit them with a little bit of PB blaster before you start things, maybe the night before, to kind of break things loose. The other thing that will really help is one of these flexible attachments for your socket wrench or impact. And it's just because you'll see it once we get underneath the car. You got some kind of weird angles to be able to get the wrench or impact in there. So this is certainly going to help with that. So with that said, let's dive into it. Now, I was able to do this without lifting the car off the ground. So I'm going to show you where we're going to start here. So on the existing muffler, there's 3 bolts actually. One's here visible, the other one's on the top. And if we come around the other side, you can see the other. There's really 3 bolts that hold that muffler on there. So we're going to start by working on those bolts. Because the angles are a little tight, this is where I mentioned that kind of flexible socket attachment is going to come in handy. So we're going to start by working on those 3 bolts there. So I got a little bit of a close-up here on this first bolt that you can see. I've got my open-ended wrench on the right, and I've got my impact on the left. Essentially just need to hold tension on one side while loosening the other. You can see I've kind of got that little bend socket attachment to make it easier, or I could also put the impact on the right side, but there's still certainly going to be some situations where it's a little harder to get that off. All right, so you can see I've got my first bolt off here, pretty straightforward. The next bolt I'm going to go for is kind of here towards the top. It's a little more difficult to get to, but same concept. Try to hold one side with the wrench, put your socket on the other side of your impact, and just crank that guy off. So the top bolt here, I didn't have a lot of room to get the impact in, so I've actually got socket on one side, socket wrench, and open-ended wrench on the other, and I'm just cranking them against each other to loosen that up. All right, so we've got our second bolt out now, leaving one left. before we go after that third bolt, this is where we probably want to introduce the second set of hands or the floor jack. So what I'm going to do is I've got a little microfiber on my floor jack. I'm going to roll the floor jack underneath here, and I'm not going to lift anything. All I want is for it to just be barely resting on the muffler here. Eventually we're going to get to taking off these straps, and at that point, that's when the weight is going to be on the floor jack or that second set of hands. So I'm going to kind of position the floor jack on the far right hand side there, or kind of in the middle of those straps. So let's roll this underneath there. And again, not looking to really lift anything up. It's really just more to support it. I don't want to lift anything. So it's really, you can see how much pressure we got there. Don't want to put anything on the motor itself, just the muffler. I need to go a little bit further in. All right, so I've got the floor jack just on the muffler now, just barely holding the weight, not lifting up the car at all. And now we're going to get back to these bolts over here. We've got one more bolt left on the top. It'll probably be the trickiest one to work your way through. All right, we've got all three bolts off. You can see underneath now, no bolts left. I ended up using the open-ended wrench in the socket again on that harder to reach bolt. The impact really only came in handy for one. I've still got my floor jack here holding the muffler up, so we're gonna move on to the last part, which are these final straps, which is really the only thing left of bearing the weight. To get those straps off, there are two Allen bolts that we'll have to loosen. So I'll get a close-up on those and we'll start lowering it down. All right, so the straps are held on by these bolts here. And they essentially, as we loosen it, the straps will get looser and looser, almost like a bracket or clamp that you'd put around a coolant hose. So we're gonna go ahead and with our Allen tool, just loosen these guys up. There's two of them, one on each strap. And again, this is where we're gonna rely on our second set of hands or this floor jack to kind of keep the muffler from falling down on its own, so we can lower it out as needed. And I can see the muffler now is kind of moving on its own. So I'm gonna just get this a little bit further out, and then we're gonna go to the one on the driver's side. Yeah, so this is pretty much not bearing any weight anymore. Let's go to the other side. All right, we're on the driver's side, same process over here. Just gonna loosen these straps. And the weight of the muffler now should pretty much all be on the floor jack or your second set of hands at this point. Okay, I've got this pretty much hand loose now. Again, you can see there's no real weight on there. Now, underneath these little straps, there's these little slots that the straps are overlaying. What we need to do is loosen it enough so these straps can go over the bracket down here. So right now, the straps go around this bracket. We need to get it loose enough to slide it around it. So essentially it's no longer keeping the muffler in place. So we gotta go a little bit looser. Now, I ended up just taking it all the way out, which is fine. All right, we're back on the passenger side. Again, just gonna, these are hand loose now. So I've got the bracket all the way off at this point. This bracket on the passenger side is fed pretty tightly through here, so you'll have to kind of slide it, fidget it to get it fully out. But at this point, the muffler is no longer being held up by anything but the floor jack. So we're gonna go ahead and lower the muffler down with lowering the floor jack. See it slowly starting to come out there, just ever so slowly. Now you can see it's being held in a little bit by the plastic. It's flexing a little bit on the bumper, but again, if you jack the car up, you could probably finesse this out a little better. But at this point, nothing is holding the muffler in. I'm gonna go ahead and lower the jack all the way and kind of start sliding it this way to get it out. All right, so you can see now we've got the muffler out. You can see that we've got the bypass here, and you can see one strap came off with the muffler. We actually still have to address the next strap. You can kind of see it hanging down here. This last strap is kind of weighing on the heat exchangers, so you kind of have to push it and finesse it through a little bit there. So you can see it's kind of starting to come around the heat exchanger there. I'm just slowly wiggling it around until we get that off. Let's see if it's easier to go the other way. There we go. So we've got this off. Now, I definitely recommend keeping your original muffler, keep the original brackets and hardware. The FabSpeed bypass does come with its own gasket, so we'll use that. However, keep all your hardware in your original muffler. Don't sell this thing. If you ever get tired of the louder exhaust, it's nice to have the flexibility to put this back on. So the hard part's done. We're gonna get this out of the way and get this bypass bolted up. All right, so putting the FabSpeed bypass on is pretty much the same process as taking the muffler off, except it's a lot easier because we've got much more room to work with now and less weight. We're gonna use the new gasket that came with the FabSpeed to put here. And then the FabSpeed actually came with some updated hardware as well, so we're gonna go ahead and use that. So we're gonna use the same 3 bolts, and essentially it's gonna connect like this. Let's see if you can get a good glimpse there. I'm gonna line up those same 3 there, and then this tip can come on or off depending on what your style is. I'm gonna go ahead and take this off just to make it easier to work with for right now by loosening this, and I'll probably leave this tip off so it's not sticking out quite as far. So what I recommend doing here is just kind of getting all 3 bolts on kind of hand tight. So I'm gonna hold this up and just hand tight all 3 bolts for now. I've got all 3 bolts hand tight now. I'm just gonna go ahead and start slowly cranking on them around the outside, using the open-ended wrench on one side and the socket on the other. All right, so we've gotten all 3 bolts put back in place. Let's see, we've got the bypass on there now. I prefer the look without this extra pipe. You can put that on and kind of angle or adjust it. It kind of looks like a cut-off dump to me. I mean, I guess you could have it horizontal and kind of sticking out, but I prefer a little bit more of a inconspicuous look, so I'm gonna leave that off. Go ahead and fire it up and take some drives. All right, we're gonna go ahead and do a cold start on the car here and back it out. Decided to wait until the morning to do this, so I'm sure the neighbors are gonna love that. Back it out here. Vehicle's cold, so you'll see me short shifting still, so don't roast me in the comments too hard. I'm pretty easy on the gearbox, especially when it's cold. My vehicle has a a 915 gearbox versus the G50. When I was searching for this car, I drove plenty of vehicles with the 915, and definitely there were some that you could tell had not been taken care of as well, or they had had quite a bit more shifts put through them. But when you have a 915 gearbox that is taken care of, it's a very enjoyable experience, actually. I might even prefer it to the G50. What I've been told is the G50 is a little bit more linear of a wear pattern. As far as one day the G50 will just shift fine, and then at some point you might have some issues. The 915 kind of wears over time, so like I've already replaced some bushings and stuff in here, but I'm actually somebody who prefers the 915 gearbox. I think it's a little bit more involved and connected, so I really enjoy shifting through the gears. So, we're gonna let this thing keep warming up before I really get into it. But it's definitely loud. You know, I would say FabSpeed advertises this as like a track or race setup. You know, when it was that cold start was very loud. Which, if that's what you're after, then this is definitely a good setup for you. So. Camera turned off for some reason. All right, the car's warmed up a little bit. You know, at idle, it's actually pretty quiet in here, but it is very loud outside. At idle, outside behind the car, it is loud. I would think maybe to the untrained person, it might sound like this car no longer has the same flat six in it. But I do think it's going to sound pretty good up in the RPM range. So we'll do a little bit of a spirited drive here now that we're warmed up. Have some little crackles and pops when you kind of let off the gas. Is it nice and quiet back there?
Not too bad.
Tell you what, it's definitely opened it up a lot. I mean, it's it doesn't sound like the same car at all anymore. It's crazy to think that that muffler that's on the car originally can really do all that sound deadening. Do a little downshift. Second here. Wow. Tell you what, if people, you know, something that I didn't really consider when I bought this car is the amount of attention that it would get. And I imagine it's going to get a lot more attention now. With the exhaust that loud. I've owned a lot of really cool German sports cars over the last 10-15 years, probably just under 40 or so cars, and this seems to be the most widely appreciated vehicle that I've owned so far. I get thumbs up and looks from people on motorcycles, Japanese sports cars, exotics, young kids, older people. Everybody seems to enjoy the air-cooled 911 era, which is pretty cool. You're just, immediately connected with people that you see. But I gotta imagine this louder exhaust is now going to gain some extra attention. Well, overall, I would say it's definitely a lot of bang for your buck, right? For 300 bucks, you can certainly open up your SC or 3.2 Carrera and turn it into a totally different sounding animal. It's probably a little louder than what I would like if I had planned to daily drive this vehicle. I'm certainly going to leave it on for a while. We've got the Porsche Palooza event next weekend in Eureka Springs, so it'd be kind of cool to do those back road rallies with this on. So I'm going to leave it on for a while. I do like it a lot. I wish at idle it was a little bit quieter. It's all going to be a preference though, right? If you're looking for something that is loud, I would almost say track or race focused, this is certainly a very cheap option. It sounds wonderful above 3,500 RPMs. It truly sounds like a 911 still above 3,000, 3,500 RPMs. At idle, I wouldn't hear the car with a blindfold on and think, oh, that's a 3.2 Carrera, because you do hear a lot. It actually sounds a lot more like a V8 at idle, or shoot, even a boat. But it is a great sound. I think it's going to turn a lot of heads. It certainly is a joy wide open, and the cracks and bangs, I mean, they're unbelievable. I hope they show up well in the video. All right, let's get into our final thoughts. The FabSpeed Bypass is a very, very budget-friendly exhaust system for the 911 SC or 3.2 Carrera. Pretty easy to install. It's nice that you can do this without a welder or any type of pipe fitting or really any muffler shop at all, right? As long as you've got some basic tools and a set of hands, you can put this thing on yourself in your garage, which is pretty nice. Overall, the weight savings is great. You can feel the vehicle's probably a little bit more peppy, probably just due to the weight and a little bit less back pressure, a little bit better flowing exhaust at this point. Because these cars aren't turboed, the back pressure isn't quite necessary. Sound, I think you all would agree, it sounds very good over 3,000 RPMs. You know, the idle is pretty aggressive. Like I mentioned earlier, it does take away a little bit from kind of that flat six sound. I think the best way to describe it is if I blindfolded you and put you next to this car, you probably wouldn't say, hey, you know what, that's a NA air-cooled 911. It sounds a lot throatier, almost like it might be a V8 underneath there, but once you get driving, it does sound a lot more like a flat six, and it makes it very exciting to drive. So if you're in the market for a low-budget exhaust system, this certainly could be a good fit. What I like is it's easy to take on and off, so if you do want to go a little bit more incognito for a bit, put your old muffler back on. It's probably 30 minutes off, 30 minutes back on. The more you do it, the easier it'll get. If you're interested in picking up the FabSpeed Bypass, I do have a link below. I'm not an affiliate for ECS Tuning or for FabSpeed. That is one way you guys can help me. If I can get to 500 subscribers, ECS Tuning will have me as an affiliate, and I'll keep bringing you all more Porsche content, just general ownership, DIYs, and product reviews. So thanks for joining.